This conference will now be recorded.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming onto the webinar today. This is Fiona Duguid on one side, and our other presenter is Daphne Rixon. And so Daphne's actually going to start us off today, and then turn it back to me, and then we'll turn it over to you. I will just also flag that we have some interactive fun for folks that we hope will work. And if you have a question, then I've got it right now so that it's off the mute. So if you do want to ask a question, that sounds great. Or otherwise, you can always use the chat question or the chat function to ask your question, and I'll try to stay on top of that as we go along. Or otherwise, there will be time at the end where we can work through any suggestions, ideas, questions that you may have. So again, welcome and thanks for taking time out of your day today to be with us. So I am going to turn it over to Daphne.
Okay, and I think I've messed up the screen here.
So don't share your screen. I have it, Daphne.
Yes, okay. We need to get it back to you, though.
It should be working
now. Okay. Can you advance it then, Fiona, for me?
Sure. Just say advance and I'll do it.
Okay, so hi, as Fiona's mentioned, I'm Daphne Rixon, and Fiona and I are presenting this webinar together. So if we move to the next one. So briefly, our agenda for today is just to go over the objectives, give you a little bit of background information about the Center of Excellence, quick background to our Cooperative Performance Indicators project, and talk a little bit about co-op performance and measurement of that. And finally, we'll conclude with a brief tour of our app that we have developed. So if you could move it along there, Fiona. Okay, so the objective of the presentation is certainly to expand our understanding about what we measure and know about our cooperatives, and more particularly to lay the foundation for measuring and reporting using the cooperative principles as a way to differentiate cooperatives from other types of business enterprises. And finally, we want to take some time, of course, to introduce our Cooperative Performance Indicators project. If you could advance, please. So before we get into that, I just want to give you a quick overview of the Center of Excellence in Accounting and Reporting for Cooperatives. So fortunately, we have a short name for that, CEARC. We were formed in 2007, and our founding partner was the Chartered Professional Accountants of Canada. And our primary reason for existence is to conduct research into cooperative purpose, multiple bottom lines, the integration of financial, non-financial reporting, accounting for cooperatives members' funds, looking at the behavior of capital in co-ops, social environmental performance, just to name a few. So basically anything to do with any aspect of accounting and reporting in the broadest sense of the term, so all of the non-financial KPI information, as well as responding to standard setters when the accounting standard setters come forward with proposals for changes in standards, then we would gather feedback from cooperatives and make a presentation to the standard setters. Finally, we also have a journal as the International Journal of Cooperative Accounting and Management. So this journal is essentially a new journal coming out, but it is the result of the merger between two prior journals. So historically, there was the Journal of the International Journal of Cooperative Management, which was based out of the UK. And then CEARC had a Journal of Cooperative Management and Accounting. So we've decided to merge these two and come up with one new journal, which is online open access, and it's targeted towards both practitioners and academics, and our inaugural issue will be out in December. However, if you go on the CEARC website, you'll see all of the previous editions of the two former journals. All of those editions have been archived on our website. So again, it's free open access. You can go in and browse for your reading enjoyment. And in terms of CEARC and my involvement and Fiona's involvement, I'm the executive director of CEARC. In addition to that, I'm also an accounting professor at St. Mary's University. And Fiona is our research fellow for CEARC, and she's also an adjunct professor into our Masters of Management program. We have a Masters of Management for cooperatives and credit unions, and we both teach in that program. So Fiona, if you could advance it, please. So I guess the question is, why are cooperative indicators important? Why do we need something specific? Well, there are quite a number of reasons why we would want to specifically measure cooperative performance. We have a wide array of stakeholders ranging from members, employees, future recruits, general public, who are interested in the cooperative performance of the business enterprise. And it also is important to illustrate the impact of the cooperative. So what differentiates the cooperative from other business enterprises? Another key aspect of measuring a cooperative is benchmarking. So many cooperatives can, of course, track their own performance on certain measures over time. However, that has limited meaning without having the ability to compare that to your peers. So, for instance, you may know what percentage of revenue you donate to the community, for example, but without some way to compare your donations to the sector, you don't know how well you're really performing, or the same goes for recycling or any other type of measure you may have. Another important role for indicators and benchmarks is that they can be used then in strategic planning and in goal setting. So say, for example, you're looking to improve in a certain aspect of your performance. Perhaps it's, on the environmental side of things, for example. Well, when you bring that plan forward, I think from a governance point of view, it's good for the board of directors to know whether or not management's targets are really stretch targets. And one way to know that is to compare your cooperative to other cooperatives at large, or in other words, a benchmark. So if you see that maybe the benchmark is well ahead of your performance, then obviously this is something that your cooperative may wish to, try to have a goal to achieve, to improve performance over time. Knowing where you stand relative to your sector is also important when you're communicating with members, to let them know how you're doing. And I think a really important benefit when it comes to measuring and comparing performance is to identify best practices. So if you see, you're performing well under your peers, then you might want to identify who has really good performance. And I find cooperatives are very generous with sharing their time and information. So I think it provides an opportunity to learn some best practices. And finally, hopefully, through all of the information and networking and learning best practices, co-ops will identify opportunities to reduce their operating costs through various initiatives. So those are lots of reasons why we want to measure performance. So we have been speaking with cooperatives for quite some time, and that's you know, an ongoing trend, ongoing comment we hear that there isn't really a readily available benchmark for cooperatives. So what we're looking at with our project here is the development of an integrated online system to collect, measure, and report using cooperative principles as the basis of the indicators and metrics. So that's why we embarked on this important project. So I'm going to turn the presentation now over to Fiona, and she's going to take it from here.
Hi, everyone. So I'm going to walk us through a little bit of an interactive project just to help us build our understanding about why co-op principles as indicators are important if we weren't already there. So if this is a conversation about economic indicators. So if folks can go to, we're going to do a little poll. And if folks can please go to www.menti.com, and then you put in this code 56898 0. And I'm going to move this over to, so there's going to be a toggling back and forth a little bit on screens. That's why we haven't got it put in the full presentation mode here. But some of the indicators you might think about then when you go to this poll, because the question is, I'm just going to bring this across here. Whoops. Oops, so it's just catching up. So this is what your poll should look like. What are the economic indicators your co-op currently reports on? And so I'm just going to toggle back and forth between our presentation slide here while everybody puts in that code. And so some of the indicators you might think about using, economic indicators, are and that you might collect are around revenues or profits or expenses or liquidity, perhaps cash flow, perhaps inventory turnover, return on investment. Any one of these could be ones that you are using. So let's see what people are generating. Oh, look, everyone's doing it. Yay. So you can start to see what people are putting in there. And it's just making a word cloud with revenue currently being the #1 economic indicator that people are using. We can also see loss, employee engagement as a form of economic indicator. That's interesting. Sustainability is also interesting. Profit, investment, member business, and dividends. This is great. Oh, here we go. Some more. Super. As we add more, our word cloud changes. Still revenue being #1, profit, capital adequacy, member acquisition. Wow, dividends, investment, member engagement, expense efficiency, member well-being. Oh, that's an interesting economic indicator. Great. Thank you, everyone, for adding more. Look, year-over-year revenue, expense ratio. I'm just adding in the new ones, but we still see revenue being one of the highest. So this is great. Feel free to continue to put it in, and we can toggle back to this as we go along. So just as you're thinking about some of those economic indicators that your co-op collects on, I wanted to throw this question out to folks about how you're able to use this information. And as Daphne already started to point out around around cooperative indicators, the economic indicators can be used in similar kinds of ways. Everything from reporting to your members, to boards, to your employees, of course, to CRA. It might help you to plan and manage your operations accordingly, help you to forecast where you're going in new goods and services, new products, or ones to phase out. It might help you to strategize or how to do your marketing. And perhaps it's doing a bit around the difference as an enterprise. So your co-op as an enterprise, how it is doing economically. And then, of course, we have to keep track of all this information. And so we have bookkeepers on staff and on contract. We have accountants, of course, are drawn in, treasurers, especially in our co-op world. And then we use all kinds of different types of software, whether that's QuickBooks or TaxPro, and you may all have, and of course Excel. You may use all kinds of different tools to keep track of this information. I'll just toggle back to our mentee just to see if anybody added anything else. Direct written premium, premier underwritten. I think we have some insurance folks on the line. Okay, so now we're going to go and we're going to do another poll. So this is in the same space, it's the same tool, and this one is around social and environmental indicators. And so again, we're in the Mentee space, and we are advancing along in that to go to the next question. Oopsie, sorry. There we go. So here's our next question. What social and environmental indicators does your cooperative currently report on? And so I'm just going to toggle back while people start to put in some ideas that your co-op may collect on. Perhaps community donations is one, perhaps volunteer hours, or maybe diversity at the governance level. Perhaps we've got some environmental indicators around greenhouse gas emissions or waste or energy efficiency, or perhaps a social type of indicator might be the living wage. So I'm just going to toggle back to the Mentee and see what is emerging for folks. Thanks everyone for putting your ideas in. So we have, oh look, living wage is coming up as one of the social, I guess, indicators that your co-op collects on. Employee diversity, different forms of governance, mental health indicators, community investment, employee engagement, board diversity. Oh, somebody collects on waste. Volunteer days, employee diversity. Great, thank you. Look at this, employee hours. So this already starts to highlight some of the different ways that you can, and different metrics you can use for your indicators, because we already have employee hours and we have employee days, two very different indicators, but ultimately going towards understanding the same thing, but different ways of measurement. This is great. Community investment, CEO to average staff pay, user hours, composting, different kinds of waste, mental health, board diversity, energy use, GHG, that's great. Look at all these great indicators people are collecting on for social and environmental. So I'll let you continue to put that in, and I'll just toggle back to our PowerPoint here. Again, let's think about how we might use these. Similar to our environment or our economic indicators, we may be reporting back to members or reporting to the board or to employees, perhaps the CRA if they offered that option. We're of course using them to plan and manage operations accordingly. Hopefully we're using it to do some forecasting. We're using it to strategize, to around marketing. And again, it might be collecting on these different indicators might be helping us as co-ops to understand ourselves and the difference between us as an organizational structure and perhaps other competing organizational structures in your industry or in your field. I'll just toggle back to our Mentee just to see if there's any other great things. Carbon footprint, reconciliation, that would be an interesting indicator. Diversity and leadership, impact investments. This is great. Feel free to add more as we go along. And so similar again to thinking about our economic indicators, how could you keep track of this information? Now, some of you might keep track of it just on your an Excel spreadsheet, but there are a number of tools out there that exist in order for different types of organizational structures to be able to understand and report and measure on the different environmental and social indicators out there. Daphne and I have worked on a project for a number of years now where we found over 74 of these different kinds of tools, many of which people have heard of, I'm sure, and perhaps even used within their co-ops. GRI, the Global Reporting Initiative, being the top one that is used internationally. But there are many others out there, perhaps B Corps or social accounting tools. United Nations Global Compact, STARS, Earth Charter. There's a whole bunch of different tools out there that perhaps you know about or perhaps your co-op actually uses. In some cases, we find that these are proprietary and purpose-built. They are often to be used alone, but not always. They are not standardized across at all. They all are working with their own processes. But there are many different motivations for the use of these kinds of tools. And perhaps you're thinking why your co-op might use one of these tools. And just as an added bonus for folks on the line, Daphne and I, with some students that have helped us, have created a searchable database with all of these tools in it. And you'll see the link at the bottom. This database is called Measure Smart, and it's free for anybody to use if you're interested in social and environmental tools that you could use for your co-op. So you can check it out online, and we've tried to find the variables that you would be interested in. But if you see anything in there that we've either missed or that you would like to know about, then please drop us a line and we can try to add it to this, because we thought it would be a helpful tool for the co-op sector out there to know that there already are these kinds of tools that exist that people can use. Okay. So we have a lot of resources out there and a lot of thinking already behind our economic indicators. And we have a growing interest in social and environmental indicators out there, with a number of tools that have been developed in order to help people to measure and report and benchmark and do all those things that we would like to do around social and environmental. And so we got to thinking, and this is where our co-op indicators project has really led us towards, is why not have a set of indicators that help us to truly understand what it means to be a co-op. So these aren't just the differentiating indicators or metrics that we can differentiate between us that are along the same indicators as all the other types of organizational structures out there, but in fact a set of indicators that really, really show what makes us different as a co-op sector. To the second point there, as we know, co-ops, and all of you know, have a great story, often a great founding story, a great story that talks about the motivations as to why your co-op was founded, and then why it continues to exist, and what kind of impact that has on your members and your communities. And often those are in the form of wonderful stories and narratives, and are told time and time again. And this project, the CPI project, is not to suggest that those stories are not important. The qualitative narratives of our co-op sector are really, really important. But what we have found, and perhaps you're finding as well, is that often when you go to make arguments for something or perhaps against something, or in general for the co-op sector, that if you have some empirical evidence behind that, it can help to make not only your argument, but perhaps also really nail down, in this case, what it means to be a co-op. And so this was one of the other reasons why we wanted to explore the opportunity to see if co-op principles made into some indicators could in fact be the way that we can get some of that empirical data behind us. So just to talk a little bit about the Co-op Performance Indicators project, as Daphne mentioned, we have been working on this for a long time, and with the help and support of a great group of cooperatives, we designed a participatory action research project, which has worked with 12 to 15 co-ops across Canada, in order to see if we can figure out what that set of indicators and the metrics behind the indicators would look like in a cooperative performance tool of some sort. And so folks from English and Canada, or English and French Canada, from all regions across the nation, as well as different types of co-ops, different industries, different sizes, and different ages of maturity have all joined us in this project, which is great, in order to try to get a set of indicators and metrics that are really able to speak to the whole co-op sector, which, as you can imagine, is quite tricky. And this is still a work in progress, but we wanted to start to share it out to folks in order to get more feedback on it, and so hence today. Hand in hand with this, we have also begun to develop an online tool that will help people to actually be able to collect this information. And so this app helps to collect the data that folks want to know about themselves around co-op principles, but also will help in the production of reports about these indicators. And so now I'm going to toggle over to our CPI tool. Hopefully everybody can see this. Here it comes, flying over to you. And so what this is the Co-op Performance Indicator tool, the CPI we call it, and what we start with. So this isn't the start page. What happens is you head onto the start page, and then you are given a log on. You log on, and then as a part of a bit of a control on our part, which is basically just to make sure that one, there are co-ops that are joining, so that we don't have, as a part of our database, non-co-op organizations in here. And then secondly, to also control for the co-op only making one profile, or otherwise we would have the co-op we could anticipate that the co-op could be in a number of times. And so we are trying to sort of control for that so that we can have a clean database of with one co-op per profile. And so once you've got that process done, the login, you will head to this page, and you can see I've just made a test co-op here, Fiona test co-op. And there's a profile section which folks will fill in once, and then there is the yearly data section. And so the main focus of today is just to show you some of those indicators that we are working with thus far. So you'll see at the top here, these are all sort of basics around some economic and some just sort of head count type of information about your co-op. But then we move into the co-op principles and the indicators behind them. And so I'm just going to scroll up here. Hopefully folks can see. So we won't touch base with every single one of these, but we just wanted to take folks on a bit of a tour. So you can see up here is the first voluntary and open membership. And so we have here, for example, barriers to becoming a member. And so what is the ratio of new members to membership of the previous year? And so then over here in this section right here is where your you as a recordee of your co-op would put in that percentage. So if you can see here the definition, the indicator is located on the left-hand side, And then the measures, this is the ultimate, the metric by which we are measuring the different principles. So just to continue to scroll down, democratic control. So member voting and attending in the AGM. This is a fairly standard one, and one that our co-op pilot representatives felt was important. The percentage of members voting and attending in the AGM. But then they thought that, for example, that really didn't fully describe the opportunities for democratic control within co-ops. And so hence the creation of the second indicator, governance opportunities for members to engage outside of the AGM. And so in this case, we are, is this a straight number count of the number of democratic opportunities. And what folks had identified was referendums or resolutions or plebiscites or different kinds of committees. Moving along, member economic participation. Again, I won't hit them all, but just to show some examples. So ownership of capital, the third one down the line, what is the percentage of capital contributed and owned by members? Which would be a real differentiator for the co-op sector as opposed to other sectors. The one above, proportion of surplus used for reinvestment or reserves. So the indicator for this is a percentage of the profits retained for reinvestment or establishment of reserves. Just cruising along to our next one, we'll just move to the education and training and information. This is a big one that helps to define our co-op sector. And so employee training, member training, board of directors training, so percentage of revenue spent on this. And then, of course, the general public training or information as well. Moving along, another one that is deeply defining of our co-op movement, cooperation amongst co-ops. Collaboration with other co-ops. So this is again a straight head count, the number of co-ops your co-op works with. Business done with other co-ops. Does your co-op have a policy to procure from other co-ops? And this in this case is a yes, no. And then here is the next sort of step on that, the business done with other co-ops as clients or as suppliers. So again, we have a percentage here as the metric. And then moving along to the last co-op principle, which is concern for community, responding to community needs. So what is the percentage of pre-tax profit donated to the community? So that is a percentage. Or business done with local businesses, the percentage of procurement from local businesses. We have some questions around sustainable development. Does your co-op have sustainable development goals or policies or practices? And in this case, it's a yes/no question. But then we also have some deeper questions for folks around targets for greenhouse gas emissions or the dollar amount donated to the community in this case. And so then what you would do is you would save for your data that you've put in for perhaps 2018, but perhaps you have all of this information for 2016, so you can add another year. There's also, of course, save, and then also go back to the home page. But just to go to this button here around another year. So what we're hoping people will do is do this on an annual basis. And so then not only will the individual co-op be able to start to track some of these indicators in order to benchmark the difference that they're making within their co-op each year, but also to say, oh, hey, we didn't hit that number that we were hoping to hit, and so how can we make changes as a result in the coming years, and then be able to benchmark that for then seeing what happens in the coming years in order to be able to capture some of that patterns or trending as well. And then finally, what we're hoping is that this will be of benefit to the individual co-op, because now you'll have this information that you can put into your annual reports or into strategic planning, report up to the board or out to members in the different kinds of ways that you can. But we're also hoping that once we start to have a critical mass of cooperatives in this tool, then it starts to become a database. And so then we will start to, so then your as an individual co-op, you could start to understand what's happening in your region or in your industry by slicing and dicing and filtering and sorting based on that as a database. But also policymakers and researchers and apex organizations or federations can also do use this as a data set to better understand what's happening in the co-op sector around the co-op principles. So it kind of has a twofold outcome, one for the individual co-op, but we are hoping that there would be a critical mass of data in there that we can then use as a data set, a wider data set for folks. But of course, that will come with that critical mass being put in there. So I'm just going to toggle back to our PowerPoint, and just to wind up what we wanted to present to you today, and to open it up to the folks on the line. But to say that we think that we are part of a movement with a value-based difference, and it's I think, and from what we've heard from folks, time that we start to really understand what that value-based difference is as a set of principles, and to also start to report on them. And that with reporting on them and having that data set behind us, we're hoping that will help with the benchmarking, help with reporting, help with strategic planning, communicating, and then we also hope perhaps actualizing what is important and what helps to differentiate what you are as a co-op. Now, this is all really a work in progress, very, very much so. And we welcome all ideas and suggestions and thoughts. And so I'm going to open it up to the wider group by, I think all you have to do is take yourself off of mute. If you have a question, and perhaps while you're thinking of a question, I can see if there's any questions in the chat.
Hi, it's Daphne. So I just wanted to mention to everyone, if you're interested in participating in the second year of our pilot project, we're accepting up to a maximum of another 20 co-ops or credit unions in the project. And it does require a little bit of time, not significant, probably 3 or 4 webinars during the year. And, you know, it's an opportunity for you to have a say in what goes into this benchmarking. So now that you've seen some of what we have in there, if you have some other ideas, some other contributions you'd like to make to it, then by all means get in touch with myself or Fiona, and we will provide you with some additional information. So we'll open it up to anybody who has any questions.
I'll break the ice if possible. I have a question.
Go ahead, please. Sorry, what was your name?
So my name is Louis Campagna. My question is, what emphasis was put in developing the current indicators that they be cross sectorial, that they apply as much to credit unions, to agricultural producers, to all different kinds of economic sectors?
Yeah, we actually do have it set up this way. So we should say that perhaps, I don't know if you can hear me or not, but one thing for this project is the participants themselves chose the measures. So they were thinking along that line as well. Also, the reporting that comes with this tool allows the users to download the information by sector or by region, so you can compare just to your own sector, or you can compare to all cooperative sectors at large.
This is, just to jump in as well, it's Fiona. This is also has been a struggle, to say the honest truth, is to find a set of indicators that can be universally applied to all sectors within our very, very wide and diverse co-op movement. This has been a really big struggle. I think you're nailing it on the head. And it has come up a number of times, and perhaps we will be able, maybe we will head that way as well, is to create a sets of indicators for each kind or type of co-op. That might be a way to go. So for the worker co-ops, for the consumer co-ops, and for all the different types of co-ops, a small set of other indicators that they could look at specifically for themselves. So it's a sweet spot of finding something that is universal and meaningful, but at the same time is robust and doable. You hit the nail on the head on a couple of different things. Other comments?
So I'd like to follow up, Louis, once again.
Sure.
Thanks. If nobody else wants to come in right now. Yes, and also I'd say that the importance of these indicators sustaining the test of time, so that we can have longitudinal comparables, between, so that we can see co-ops improving within co-op identities along the years. So that's important. The second question I'd like to put in here is, so since 2016, the co-op movement has aligned itself with the United Nations SDGs. And there's a lot of crossover. For example, SDG number 4 is about education. I mean, widely understood, and we obviously have principle number 5. So has there been any consideration as to meshing together or finding some way to insert the SDGs throughout these indicators where they clearly are both co-op and SDGs? SDGs essentially being very long-term objectives.
Yeah, I love that you have asked that question too, because this has also come up time and time again, not only with the research that we're doing, but also within the pilot project. And also with especially apex organizations that are starting to think more and more about how to support their members in pursuing and understanding and pursuing and reporting on the SDGs and how their co-ops connect to them. So one of the ideas that we did think about was to create, this would maybe, again, we're wide open to ideas here, but one of the things that could be is a co-op principles package, and then perhaps another package that would be called SDG Package. And working through those SDG indicators, of which there are hundreds, to see which ones are most applicable to co-ops and are most of interest to co-ops and are most doable for co-ops, and as a way of supporting folks to be able to collect that information in a one-stop shop sort of place that is this tool. At the moment, that hasn't launched yet, but I think it's pretty quick on the heels of defining these principles. Other questions? And certainly feel free to jump into the SDG question just that much more too, because this is something of deep interest for CEARC and definitely emerging within the co-op sector.
Hi, this is Venkat from the cooperatives in Guelph. My it's not exactly a question, but to work with you, like we do collect a lot of metrics, both economical and non-economical as well. So would there be any confidential info like from internal finance or like that you need, or an overview of what are the indicators we collect? If I can provide those, would that help? If so, then I can.
Everyone's hitting on all the hot spots for this project. One of the other items that has not been fully decided on or fully fleshed out is that level of confidentiality piece.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of what you're hinting at, right, Venkat?
Yeah.
And so this is something we have the challenge right now. It's how confidential does this information need to be?
Mm-hmm.
What is about privacy and what is about confidentiality? So meeting
Mm-hmm.
the two different things. What can be put out there without the name of the co-op or with the name of the co-op? Or does it really matter because we report on all this stuff in our annual
Mm-hmm.
reports anyway?
Yeah.
It is a conversation to have. I personally find that as soon as you call anything data, which I'm inclined to do as a researcher, but as soon as you call anything data, then people all of a sudden think that it's something that they have to hold close to their chests.
Yeah, they have to defend it. Yeah.
and which very well may be the case, or maybe it's not.
Okay.
We welcome ideas about this and conversations about that confidentiality and privacy piece.
Yeah, if I can
Even,
jump in here, this is
yeah,
Daphne. I just want to point out that the way our system is designed is that each participant can only see their own data and they can only see the others in aggregate. So that's the approach that we're taking to start off this project with. But obviously with a small group, we don't really have enough critical mass yet.
Mm-hmm.
To really fully protect confidentiality, because each of the 12, they all know each other. But certainly as it expands, then that in itself is a way to protect confidentiality.
Okay. Fine. We collect many types of metrics, and something I believe in is we cannot measure what we improve is one thing, and also learnings and what other cooperatives are collecting. Maybe there's something we could add, or maybe others can learn from us. So I'll be in touch. I'll send an email as a follow-up to see if I can provide a list of what we collect and work with you both.
Thank you, Venkat.
Yeah, no, welcome. The only thing is time. So as you said, if it's not a big drain on the time, I'll be happy to work with you.
Thank you. Other comments, questions, suggestions, thoughts?
May I, Louis, here?
Yes, please.
Thank you. So not one to shy away from difficult issues. So Co-op Principle 1 mentions, without discrimination for, race, gender, and so on and so forth. And myself, I'm a Gen Xer. And I notice a trend, I guess, in the millennial generation, a big focus on diversity. Diversity often defined as, identity criteria. And I was wondering if there was consideration in these indicators where diversity is concerned, whether a choice is being made, because there is one to make, whether a diversity will be about identity or will it be viewpoint diversity? Do you see where I'm getting at? I'm more in the John Stuart Mill tradition personally, but I understand that the way membership looks is important to some people, and that is a very political decision. So I wondered if that is considered in the indicators.
Yes, it has been talked about a lot. It is one of the things that, on the one hand, we struggle with within the co-op movement, I think, but then on the other hand, are maybe not expanding as much as we should. And I don't know what else I could say except for to say that it has come up. It's come up a number of times. And as we further define these indicators, I am hoping we will land with a very meaningful and robust indicator around diversity.
Yeah, thank you. I think that will necessitate robust discussions for sure.
I just, perhaps as folks collect some thoughts, I see that there is a question here in the chat. Is the intention so far to provide a survey of potential co-op indicators as opposed to best practices and or benchmarking? From Andrew Morris. Andrew, are you still on the line? Did you want to add more? Okay, so we are trying not to think of this in terms of the word survey because we are hoping that this is something that is done, that co-ops feel is an important part of understanding their impact. And so it's something that they would fill out every year, perhaps with some prompts from us. You know, eventually, if we got that big in it, then there started to be sort of a groundswell of this. So it's not so much a survey where we are collecting information that is used once and that's it, but more that it's a survey that is about the creation of a database that then we can do things with. The individual co-op can do stuff with, whether on that one moment snapshot, or hopefully we'll see some trending and some patterns building there. And then, so then that would help also with the benchmarking. And then the best practices piece, this is also where we are really open to figuring out how to do this best. What we've heard time and time again from the folks who are generously given their time within the pilot project is that one of the things that defines our co-op sector is the willingness to share best practices, as opposed to feeling that we are in a competition zone at all times. And so I think it's one of our challenges is to figure out ways within this tool to support people, not only to understand that benchmarking piece across co-op to co-op and like size or like industry co-op, but also the what are they doing in order to have those best practices in place. And it's I feel like it's our challenge to figure out a way for this tool to also help with that. So sort of an answer to that question, Andrew, and perhaps for others, but in this moment of development, we don't have the firm answer to that yet. Other questions from folks?
Okay, well, it seems like I think we've heard from everyone. In the meantime, should you have any further questions or comments, or as I said earlier, potential interest in joining the year 2 of our pilot, you can get in touch with either Fiona or myself. And we thank you so much for taking the time to attend our webinar today.
Thank you, everyone.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Daphne, so I will, yes, Venkat, if you're still on the line, we will have the PowerPoint, we will I think we'll post on the CEARC website, or please send us an email and then we can send it to you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
And anybody else who is interested, as Daphne said, please head on over to the CEARC website or send us an email, or feel free to check out the CPI tool, or also don't forget about the Measure Smart tool as well if you're interested in social and environmental indicators.